I think we can start. The recording started, so we can start with the presentations. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for being here today with us, and thank you for Lirazis for the support for this webinar. My name is Federico, and I'm the business developer at Science for the United States branch, and I'm based in Kansas City. And today with me, there's Irene Buso, business development manager at Science, and Andrea Bollini, Chief Innovation Technology Officer at Science. And thank you very much for being here. We would like to ask you to put all the questions that you might have in the chat, and we will go ahead and answer them at the end of the presentation. And we will try to answer to all your questions and concerns regarding this topic today. So I think we can start with the agenda and see what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, we would like to have a Science introduction, just to tell you a little bit more about us, and then we will talk about what are the entities in digital repositories, and then we will move to the importance of entities, especially in DSpace, and how those entities work in the DSpace platform. We will then move to some use cases for entities in DSpace and the best practices for implementing those in DSpace. We'll then move to some examples of DSpace CRIS and entities, and a case study of the University of St. Gallen and how they implemented entities in their platform. And we will move then to the conclusions of the presentation and answer all your questions. Thank you again for being here, and I just leave the floor to Irene.
Yeah, thank you. Also on my side, thank you for participating in this webinar. And I tried to be brief about who we are at Science. And I know that most of you already know us and know what we do. We at Science, we provide solutions for research, information, data management, and for cultural heritage. Indeed, our staff has been committed in the DSpace contributions, and in particular leading the DSpace 7 development since 2003. We are certified platinum provider of DSpace, and we created 2 extensions of DSpace, and these are mainly DSpace CRIS and DSpace GLEM, specifically designed for cultural heritage. Obviously, we provide consultancy and we manage all the project phase, and we provide installation, configuration, and customization for many, many clients throughout all over the world. And all of our solutions support the compliance with the most key international standards, just like OpenAir, ORCID, Serif, and IIIF. Please, next, Andrea. And what we believe in, I just wanted you to know that for us, the security and the quality is not a matter of compromise while serving the open knowledge ecosystem. So I was saying before, all of our solutions support all the key defining transnational policies, and obviously are based on interoperability, preservation, collaboration, innovation, and open standards. We are proud certified platinum provider of the DSpace community that we serve. We are member and trusted cloud provider of the Cloud Security Alliance, and much more. Next, please. We operate in the context of open knowledge ecosystem since 2016 as Science. So we know that proprietary products may often come with expensive licenses and obviously pricing fluctuation. And moreover, they become obsolescent and can result in vendor lock-in. And we do not want so. So We believe that open knowledge helps to solve, by collaboration, all the world's pressing problems. So creating new opportunities through dissemination. And all our solutions are designed to support open science in this regard. Next, please. But I'll be very, very brief about that. So these are our principles. The open knowledge behind everything we do, solutions to services, fair data. We want our solutions to be enablers of your data to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. As I was saying, compliance and quality first, so following opener guidelines and the most quality procedures that we can, and security battle-tested solutions. So solutions that are secured by design. And with that, I leave the floor to Andrea with the next slide and with this nice speak. So time to go deeper with Andrea Bollini, our Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, to give you some hints for the entities to exactly reflect your processes through a perfect data model.
Thanks, Irene and Federico, for the nice introduction. So let's start talking about entities. That is the main focus for today's webinar. First of all, what we mean when we talk about entities in digital repository. Entities are a way to represent data in a much structured way manner than what we are allowed with just flat metadata. And they are really crucial to describe the record and connect this record with other record in our repository and give a context around our information. So if we look to the real world, we will have a lot of example of different entities that have specific characteristics. So we talk about people, we talk about organization, publication, but entities can be also something more abstract. For instance, they could relate to concepts, to subject vocabulary. They can be used to represent the sustainability goal of UNESCO and create thematic collection. Of course, in the context of institutional repositories, some example come to our mind immediately, and they can be journal article, book, conference proceedings, so different type of resource output or research output, but they can also be used to represent to detail aspect of a specific journal title or talk about event, instruments, words, and many, many other. So entities are the starting point of your data model for sure. Is the first thing that you need to address. You need to decide which kind of record, which kind of information do you want to track in your repository, what is relevant for you and for what you want to share with the community. Both internal community, because the repository is a tool for your user, but also for external partner, institution, and anyone that could be interested to understand better what you are doing. And it's really important that the data model that you are going to adapt is flexible, because things change. Is normal. You need to plan for change, and but also need to be effective. This is something that is a pitfall of any project. So it's very easy to start with something too much complex, to set goals that are not ready for at start for an institution to reach. So maybe you want to track too much information or track detail that you are not able to to currently manage, not from a technical perspective, but more from organization perspective and process. So when you talk about information that you want to collect, it's not only about the piece of information, the data that you need to store, but you also need to think about which process and which people will work at your institution to make these, to input this data in your repository and to keep this data accurate and complete. So the perfect data model is what you need. There is not a single answer. Need to be tailored to your specific need. But of course, you need to rely on the experience and what we learn from other projects and from the community as a whole. So we need to avoid to create different data model and to reinvent well, but use as much as possible international standard. And the good news is that the DSpace 7 architecture gives you the freedom, the flexibility that you really need. There is no default data model in DSpace 7 that you are forced to adopt, but you can configure your own. And when you define the entities, so the key stuff that you want to collect in your repository, the second step is start to think about the relation and how these different entities are connected in your repository. So why we are talking about that, which is the expected benefit, which is the actual benefit of using entities. Entities for sure improve the discoverability of your content. In several ways, it makes much easier for your user to search and navigate your digital assets. You can follow different navigation paths to retrieve the information that you need. But using entities, you are also going to normalize your data and to avoid duplication of information, and at the end to improve the accuracy and consistency of your metadata. Because when you need to reference a project from a publication or to reference a person from a publication, you can rely on a single record where all the detail about this project, about this person are included. And avoid the risk to name the person in different way or to use different name for the project, or maybe making typo in specific publication when you need to refer to a grand number or things like that. And this better accuracy of your data also allow you to provide more sophisticated querying and analysis of your data. So good analysis, good reporting can only be built on top of a high quality data. If you don't curate your repository data, you cannot take advantage of the great information that are stored in the repository. And which are the normal usage of entities in DSpace? The starting point, the usual needs are use entities to represent authors, organization, research project, funding agency, and more. For instance, some of these entities are already known by the DSpace community from the past. So you are used to mention author in your publication, but previously this was just string name. And so you cannot really understand my production if you just look to a string where you have my surname and, for instance, some acronym or initial of my name. And as I have multiple first name, I could have signed some of my publication with a different name. And of course, the same apply also to organization. We know how much creative also our researcher can be when they refer to their home institution. And organization also in department change structure, change name over their history. So entities can also be used to track this changing world in a much better way than DSpace collection have done in the past, that represents something that is much more static and less flexible than entities. So technically speaking, entities is nothing really new for DSpace. They are just special type of item. So we decide to label item according to their entity type. And this allow DSpace to make other feature configuration depending on the entity type. So you have items that are used to represent person, items that are used for organization, for publication, and so on. So why entities are useful for institution from the institution perspective? Again, they enable richer metadata, and this is really precious. This is something that you really need to think about and to care about. You need to have clean data in your repository. You need to have high quality data because this is the starting point to build any advanced added value service on top of your repository. Researcher and user can understand better the context of what they are looking. So they can analyze a publication in the context of the research project that have generated this output. They can connect the publication with the dataset that are being used and analyzed in this publication, or they can explore and see the instruments that have been used to collect specific data set. Entity, again, help you to maintain that quality and consistency. But this is because you avoid duplication of information, but also because creating what we usually call application profile, defining what a person is in your institution, what a project is in your institution, you define a standard way to collect such kind of information. And giving a standard representation for this information in your institution that, of course, is based on international standard, you will get more insight and you will enable the production of reporting and aggregation and understanding at a very high level what is going on at your institution. And again, we will see more later, but entities are also crucial to improve the interoperability. So when we want to have our repository to exchange information with other platforms, we need to be sure that data are consistent and that all pieces of information are identified by persistent identifier, and we have a shared data model and representation of our information. And all of us know that is 10 years now is not more a new thing, but all the international projects are now talking about knowledge graph. So we cannot look to a single record as a standalone piece of information, but we need always to look to a record in the context of a graph, and this record is part of a large graph of connected information. And also from the user perspective, entities are fundamental, are pivotal in DSpace because they enable you to discover content by unexpected, unanticipated path. So you cannot know which is the reason why an external user is going to explore your content, what is looking for. So maybe it's interesting to specific skill of a researcher to your institution to establish a new collaboration, or is looking for a department, or is just looking for some content that will help in his current research. And The way that your research is connected with the goal of this user is unknown in advance. So you need to allow to follow different path in exploring, starting from one publication, moving to the dataset, moving to other kind of dataset that are produced by the same instruments, or other output that has been produced in response to the same sustainability goal that seem to be not so strictly related with your publication at the first class. And so entity at the end can help to identify an expected relation and connection, but also enable you to make analysis using tool that are specific of the graph world to understand the evolution and also the impact of the research. So see how a specific paper have influenced other researcher or contributed to different project and so and so. So how you can enable linking in this space, from where you should start? Of course, for sure, you should start from the publication. That is the basic piece of information that almost all DSpace repository hold. And you should start to identify authors. This is to overcome the problem with disambiguation of author name and to accurately identify the contribution of each researcher. You can move on to categorize the publication, to connect publication with your research project. These allow you to track the evolution of research activities in your repository and the flow of the production related to a specific research activity. And you can link to this research activity the funding that have supported your research, connecting them also to the output that was again funded and result from this research initiative. And this will be precious to respond to requests from funding agency about the actual impact and how the fund that they have provided have been used into research. And of course, you also want to have your institution, your department, laboratories, and working group at your institution to be acknowledged of their production. You want to be able to understand which are their performance and point of strength and so on. So it would be precious to link also organization to publication. So what you can do with DSpace? The core point of DSpace is about the flexibility and the possibility of customize the DSpace platform according to your need. As anticipated, DSpace allows you to create your own data model, to configure the relation among the entities, and to define which workflow and metadata you need to use to describe each individual publication. So the message here is that you have a very rich toolbox in this space that can allow you to perfectly match your specific requirements. So how we can use Entity to allow a more dynamic DSpace repository than what was used before version 7. Again, we say we start creating Entity to represent author, project, funding entity, funding agency, so that we have publication linked to a specific author. We can move to the author profile and see the wall output from research output from this specific author. And this will make easier for user to follow the research activities of a specific researcher. And is also provide service to your researcher because they can easily build a curriculum vitae from what they have in the repository. They can use the repository as a showcase for their research activity to promote themselves as an expert for specific for asking for specific funding or other collaboration, maybe technology transfer to industry and so on. But more concretely, entities in this space are right now already essential for to take advantage of some advanced feature. As for science, we have donated to the community the integration with ORCID. That was an high demanded feature from researchers and institutions since a long time. With the ORCID integration, you can synchronize the content that you have in the space with the ORCID registry. And this is done according to the rule, to mean set that ORCID require to follow. Essentially, the ORCID profile need to be self-managed by the researcher. Is the researcher to have full control over his ORCID researcher profile. So the researcher can enable this synchronization, can authorize the repository to synchronize data with the ORCID profile. And doing that, using the ORCID API, we are able to collect, to capture authenticated ORCID ID. This is again a guarantee of data quality because the ORCID ID are verified and cannot be wrong. It's a long sequence of digits, so if you allow your researcher to input this manually, it's very easy to make mistake. But with this integration driven by the API, you are guaranteed that the ORCID ID that are in your repository are actual and correct. And also, if you are a member of the ORCID you have access to the ORCID member API, and you can configure this APK in your repository and enable the automatic synchronization of local DSpace data with ORCID. So the researcher will input information once, and this information entered in the repository will be reused everywhere, starting from ORCID, where we will push these bibliographic data and will be available in the ORCID profile. But also more is coming to this space. So For Science is contributing to compliance with the signposting protocol that has been identified by the Next Generation Repository Group of CORE as one of the enabling technology for next generation repositories. This protocol will allow a better understanding from crawler, from machine, about the content of your repository, so that other platform will be able to understand the connection that exists among full text file, so a PDF file, and to metadata that you have in your item page, and how this publication is related to a specific author, so to capture the ORCID ID. And again, in this case, signposting will give the maximum of benefit when you also are using entities together with DSpace. We are also working in implementing the core notify protocol for DSpace. This will be proposed for DSpace 8. So for the next major version of DSpace, and will allow the repository to work better inside a network of repository or platform that will support scholarly communication in general. So the core notify protocol aims to support use case like open peer review and distributed connection of a record among different repositories, so that your repository could contain the publication and a repository at another institution, or maybe also in your institution, but with a different platform, with in a separate repository could hold the data set. And you want to have these two records connected together. Also in this case, when you have entities enabled in your repository, the core notify protocol will provide the best of its feature. Last but not least, you can also take advantage of entities when you integrate with the OpenAir Graph and the notification broker. This is a current pull request from For Science that again has been proposed to be included in version 8, but is already available on GitHub as a pull request. Will allow you to receive notification from the OpenAir platform about improvement that you can make to your existing records. So maybe some of your publication are missing some key metadata like identifier of relation from publication to project and so on, or also to suggest record that are content that is missing in your repository. So if you have an author profile in your repository and the OpenAir Graph know about other publications from this author, you could get suggestion about important publications that are currently missing. And this, again, will result in better data quality and correctness of your repository. So, which is the relation among entities in DSpace and in DSpace CRIS? Well, For Science start to talk about entities more than 10 years ago. DSpace CRIS is the enhanced version of DSpace that we support since 2010. That have introduced from the start the concept, feature to support the need to contextualize information. So to provide aside the publication, also record for, again, author, organization, project, funding, and so on. And with DSpace 7, the entity concept implemented in DSpace 7 has been aligned with the approach also used in DSpace CRIS. So DSpace CRIS and DSpace share exactly the same concept about an entities. In both cases, we are just talking about DSpace item that have a specific metadata used to type this item, to bound this item to a specific entity. So we've labeled some item as publication, other as project, and so on. In DSpace CRIS, we have two different ways to support relations. One is inherited from DSpace and is used when we really need to stress the concept of data integrity. And another one is based on the authority framework and allow us to have more flexibility to manage semantic relation. So essentially, DSpace crease allow the same entity and the same mechanism that exists in this space, plus an additional way that gives us more freedom, more flexibility in managing relation among these entities. Another key difference is that for DSpace, entities are just a feature that you need to eventually enable. And we are there to strongly recommend you that you start to use entities also in plain DSpace right now. But DSpace crease embraced the entity concept without any compromise. So in DSpace crease, entities are enabled by default. And starting from that, we are able to build a specific dedicated feature in a much straightforward way and easy way than DSpace that need to manage the eventuality that the entities are not enabled. As we decide to embrace entity as default, and due to the long experience that we have in working with institutions that really use entities since the last 10 years, we know that it's not enough to just track information about person, to track information about institution and so on, but we need to support process. And we also need to be very careful about security and privacy, because when we move from, if we are talking about publication, we are talking essentially about public metadata, at least metadata. But if we move to something else, a lot of additional concern about security and privacy come in. We talk about birthday, gender, money that has been received for a specific grant. We talk about funder. In some case, there are concerns about disclosure of industry partner or other information that are quite sensible. So in DSpace crease, we provide out of box a much granular security, and you can define who can see each individual piece of information of a record at a single value of the single metadata. So you can decide to hide the birth date of your researcher, or to have the individual researcher to decide about their privacy setting, for instance. And of course, as I already say, the life cycle is completely different for this entity compared to publication. You need to manage process around them. So you need to have a much more distributed way to maintain this data. You need to allow researchers to manage their own profile. You need to allow secretary of department to manage the organization unit profile, and investigator to manage and keep updated the status of a running project. So if we try to summarize the difference, in DSpace is a toolbox, and you have entities as a blocking building block for your repository. You have the flexibility to make your own configuration and to define your data model. You don't get so much feature specific of the entities, as it's everything up to you to configure. Everything is similar, and the features that are available for an organization are the same that are available to manage publication. And we know that this is not always the ideal solution. In DSpace crease, entities are already tailored to research information space. So we decide to provide a richer default data model that follow the international standard and learn from the experience of hundreds of institutions around the world. And again, we provide specific features. So when we deal with the person record, we provide you all the features that are needed for researcher to self-manage their profile. They are able to build and export the curriculum vitae in a PDF file, and everything that our researcher expect to have from a modern to a modern platform. And the same also apply for project and other entities where we can easily support more tailored workflow and lifecycle management. So just very quickly, an example, a real example from our latest implementation of entities in DSpace. This repository has been put in production, I guess, less than 1 month ago, a couple of weeks ago, and is from the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. And they have, as you can see, they manage research output, project, and people in the repository. So on the left side, you have a publication. And from this publication, you can easily move from this publication to get detail about the author, the internal author that have authored this publication, and check the detail about the project, the research project that have funded this publication. And all these records are bidirectionally connected. So if we look to the researcher profile, into a researcher profile, you will get a list of all the publication, all the project from this researcher, additional information about the researcher, bibliometrics about this researcher, and you can move back to the publication from there or to the project where these researchers have contributed. And the same apply for the project. So in the project detail, the project record, you have reference to back to the publication that has been supported by this project, and investigators that are working on this project. So which are the result of this implementation? The university have increased the discoverability of their content, and they have created a more comprehensive view of the research output, and they allow users to explore related content. Authors also have received new feature as they are able now to get their own CV easily from the platform, and they can use the platform as a showcase with partner and funders. And at the end, the whole visibility of the repository and at the institution at the end has been increased. Other example of usage of entities in DSpace. We have successful implemented entities in other repository to track contribution to sustainability development goal. We know that many institutions are really interested in this topic and aim to share what they are doing in response to this need. We have also created specific flow and process to support tracking of impact, of research impact, but also to help researchers to plan in advance for impact, following the impact pathway approach, where you build a complex graph of relation among action that you are going to conduct, and impact that this action you expect to produce, and linking this expectation also with the actual observed impact, you can also analyze how successful you was and how you can correct your action in a future project. And also, its entities are not only about research. We focus in this presentation about research information space, but we use entities also into cultural heritage domain. So for gallery, library, archive, and museum, where you can use entity. We have used entities to manage archival collection, thematic path, and store annotation and build story for using cultural content in storytelling. So, in conclusion, entities are, in our opinion, a very powerful and essential tool for your repository. You can use entity to create a more dynamic and interactive repository. You will better showcase your activities, your research output, and everything that you do using entities. And we will be very happy to put our experience at your service and sit together to understand how entities can help to your institution to reach your goal. I leave the floor to Irene.
Federico, actually, for the takeaways, and then we will manage Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the whole presentation. Hope everyone enjoyed this hour together. Just for the takeaways, as Andrea said, to wrap up, be sure to choose the best data model possible so that entities in your DSpace-based solution can better reflect your institutional processes, giving value to your assets. And as Andrea said, as for science and as a major contributors to the DSpace community, we would love to put our expertise at your service. If you want to stay up to date with our news, here you guys have the For Science social media pages, or you can contact us at info@forscience.com or at forscience.com for our website. And if you will join us for future conferences, we will be at the IIIF conference in Naples in June, as well as Open Repositories in South Africa. And we will also be at the JCDL conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the end of June. So we hope to see you around the world.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, all of you, for being here with us. And obviously, many thanks to our friends from Lyrasis again. I think that we can start to wrap up all the questions, starting with one from Jonathan. When using our organizational units as an entity, how would we go about adding them at a repository initial configurations? Is there built-in UI functionality to allow existing ones to be edited or new ones to be added? And would such UI functionality allow one org unit to be linked to another, for example, to form an organizational tree structure? And moreover, that's pretty a long question, with people as entities, is it possible for new ones to be created automatically? For example, when someone first uses their repository, can a user edit their own entity, for example, to create a relation to their org unit? I think that we can start with it, Andrea. And basically, the first question is, how about adding the org units at a repository initially configuration?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very interesting question, and it can be done. So the basic answer is yes, you can manage your organization tree in DSpace. You can create a collection that will hold organization item and give to some user or maybe to all your user the permission to create a new record in this collection that actually will mean new organization. This will allow you to create an organization, to department. You can configure your data model to manage the hierarchical tree. So to have a department with a parent faculty and things like that. This is what you can do with a basic DSpace, with the default DSpace. The next step will be how to maintain this information. So it's easy to create, but you also need to curate this information because institutions evolve, and you want to do more. And of course, some large university cannot expect to have a single user, a single administrator to maintain all this information. So if you need to delegate more and to allow the director of department to perform some specific change to their own department page, or a secretary to help and so on, these kind of specific feature for organization are not built into default DSpace, but are supported out of box by DSpace with a wide range of extra configuration that allow you to further tailor these needs to your specific process.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that this perfectly answers to the first point from Jonathan, but how about the UI functionality that may allow org units to be linked to another entity, such like forming an organizational tree structure? Is it possible?
Yeah, again, it's possible. So you can configure it into submission. So when you create a new organization, the submission can also include a relation so that you can say this organization related to another one. But for this, also in this case, the default DSpace allow you to establish relation among already existing object. So you need to be very careful about from where you start to input your content. If you create a department, you want to link this department to the faculty must be already there. If you want to support more friendly process, where you don't know in advance what will come in first, this kind of additional feature that allow you to build a new entities right now when you need it is only supported by DSpace, Chris.
Thank you, Andrea, for this. And I'll skip to the second question from Augustina. It's similar to the Jonathan's one, but it's related to ORCID. So the question is, are there any tool to populate a list of authors, so person entities?
In a basic DSpace, you can import a person from ORCID one by one. So you can do that from the user interface, or you can do that via REST API. And this will allow you to easily make a script that will create in bulk a list of person items starting from known ORCID ID. DSpace Chris have some additional built-in feature that would allow administrator to do that via an Excel file. But yes, essentially you are able to manage this need on both DSpace and DSpace Chris.
Perfect. We also have another interesting question from Yvonne that says that They are currently on DSpace 6, but they will migrate into the 7.4 this year. And every author they submit right now gets an individual authority key. But if the same author is listed slightly differently in another uploaded article, it creates a new authority key. Will entities help to take care of this issue?
Yeah, that's why you mentioned disambiguation earlier. That's correct.
Yes. Once that you create entities, person item, you will be able to link all the publication with this single person item record. Actually, technically, it will solve this problem from the practical perspective. Is not yet the final solution, because if you want to maintain in each individual publication the slightly different way that the author was named, and maybe this could be relevant because we know that in some country, woman, for instance, take the surname from when they are married, and they would like to keep in the original publication the name that was really used to sign this publication and see the change. So from the technical perspective, you could be able to do that on using entities. But from the user interface right now, you will be not able to really do that. So you will link just the publication with the person item, and you will see just the current name of this person. This is another example where DSpace Chris have a slightly different behavior that solved this issue. And in DSpace Chris, you can track all the variants, all the different name of a researcher. They can be used to retrieve the content regardless to which form was used to sign the specific publication. But DSpace Chris allow you to store in the individual publication exactly the name that you want to use for this publication that was used in the original publication.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we have another question from Ravismore. Sorry for the pronunciation. Hope is that correct. And is asking if there's any guide out there on how to transition to entities when migrating from DSpace 5 to 6 and 7, etc.
Not for what I know, honestly. We are going to present. We will have a presentation at Open Repository about the migration experience that we have conducted at For Science, and I plan to add a couple of hints about how to take advantage of entities and how you can manage this migration from version 5 to version 7.
Perfect. We have another interesting question from Maria that is asking, will the sign posting be run in parallel to the OAI protocol?
Yes, they are independent. So right now, the pull request is currently under review. We hope that they will be merged over the next week. And right now, it is proposed to be enabled by default. So you don't need to do anything special to enable this feature in your DSpace songs that you will upgrade to 7.6.
Great, thank you. And from Vicente, there's another interesting question that asks how authority keys are relationed with entity like person.
In the basic DSpace, authorities and entities are two different things. So there is no relation among them. In DSpace case, we use authorities also to link items together. So when entities are used as authority in DSpace case, the authority key will match with the UID of the entity item. But this is just for DSpace case, not for DSpace.
Great. Perfect. We have another question from Vera that is asking, in what concerns the creation and management of individual entities, is it possible to create relations among them, having, for instance, a tree structure and links among several authors' scientific name in use?
I think that Andrea already answered in a first instance to this question, because it was similar to the one from Jonathan Green, if I'm not mistaken. So we can skip
we can skip
next.
Perfect. The next one from Aditya that is asking to how to configure custom entity types.
Oh, okay, that's a broader spectrum question. Really broader spectrum.
Yeah, there are, of course, more detailed information about that on the technical documentation. By the key step are define the entity name, and you have an XML configuration file that is used to define the relation that this new entity have with other entities. And configuration file essentially allow you to store the data in your database and also enable the administrator of item. So when you go as an administrator to edit the item, you will be able to establish relation among your entity and another one. After that, you should change the configuration of the submission. So there is an XML file, it's named item submission, where you define which metadata you want to collect when a new object is created. So you will need to specify how your person record will look like, or instrument record will look like, and so on. And last but not least, you will need to modify the search configuration to make sure that you have configuration that match the new metadata you have created and the relation that you have defined. And finally, you want to probably change the user interface. So you will need to customize your Angular code to visualize your entity in a proper manner.
Okay, thank you. And let's keep with the next. I hope I do not miss any of your entity-related questions. There's one from Jorge, speaking about a collection of entities, whether there are no clear outright examples of what exactly needs to be in the XML file. Jorge is currently asking, what exactly do I need in submission form XML to allow author insertion to use an entity of the person type?
Yeah, I suggest that this will be answered better by written, because yeah, there are references on the documentation that we can share.
Yeah, just write to us at our contacts, and we'll try to answer at our best. Skipping to the next from Marianne. Marianne is curious about how author entities will work with articles that are authored by many authors, many of whom are not from their institution. So, for example, minimal metadata.
You are not required to identify each author in a publication. And usually many institutions prefer to only identify and create person item record only for the internal researcher. Some institutions also track external collaborator or frequent collaborator with their institution, or they retrieve external collaborator from the ORCID registry, for instance, so that they can have at least a basic profile retrieved from ORCID.
Okay, thanks. And we are going with super active Jonathan asking, when shifting from 5 to 7 or maybe 8 to, if people entities and publication entities are used, are there any thoughts on how to export the DS5 notion of connections between authors and publications to convert it to an equivalent set of relationships between publication and people entities? And if there's no automatic way, is linking relationship building supported by the UI? This was answered right before. For example, as a task, we could gradually work through manually.
Well, it's not exactly clear to me what you mean in exporting the DSpace 5 notion of connection, because essentially in plain DSpace 5 there is no notion of connection. There are no author. Maybe you are talking about authority, so author stored as authority in DSpace 5. If this is the case, there is no tool out of box, but
it's about the authority index. Just Jonathan just clarified.
Okay, so essentially you need to write your own solution, but you should extract raw data from Solar where you have the authority, and you can import this data back in DSpace using the bulk edit feature. So you can enhance your DSpace 7 version, establishing the connection among publication and author in bulk. And in DSpace, you can do that with the bulk edit. You can do also that by hand over the user interface, but of course, I don't suggest to do that if you have a large repository.
Got it. Okay. Many thanks from Jonathan.
Perfect. Next question from Anna Luisa that is asking, what is the current stable version of DSpace Chris? And if there are any APIs regarding retrieving and updating information about DSpace Chris entities.
Yeah, the second one is the easier one. Yes, there are always REST API to do anything in DSpace and in DSpace Chris. Due to the architecture pattern that has been implemented in DSpace and DSpace Chris, everything that you can do with the user interface can be done via REST API. So everything that you see, it can be done with the REST API. The latest released version of DSpace Chris, I think, because my colleagues are just going to perform that this day, but I don't think that is happening today, is numbered 2022 0301, because we use as versioning the year of reference. And we are going to make the first release of 2023 as anticipated over the next days. So it's really coming. And this will be aligned to DSpace 7.5. In September, we expect to have the release aligned with DSpace 7.6 that will be released for DSpace by the end of June. So latest stable version of DSpace is 7.5, and the corresponding version of DSpace Chris is coming out in this day. And next version are 7.6 for DSpace and 2023-02 that will be released in September for DSpace Chris, that will be aligned with 7.6.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have another question from Nima that is asking if they haven't activated the entities on DSpace Chris yet, and they decide to activate it now for an upgrade to the version 7.6. What happens to the items which have been added in the past, so before activating the entities? So will the authors have two identities? And if so, is it possible to merge the identities during the upgrade?
Is she talking about DSpace Chris or DSpace?
DSpace.
DSpace 7. So
okay, so yeah, this is the same question essentially of the other. When you move from DSpace 5 or 6 and you have the authority, and you move to DSpace 7, there is no automatic translation of authority in entities. You need to manage this transformation by yourself, exporting the data, manipulating them externally, and importing them back, maybe using the bulk edit. But this is not done automatically during the migration.
Okay. Thank you. Just we have the very last questions. There are two questions not specifically related to entities by Mohamed Matiza. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So asking, on DSpace, does the access control allow the institution to maintain certain data private and only accessible to specific people? And the response is yes, but I can ask Andrea to detail slightly more.
Yes, in a normal DSpace, the answer is that. So you need to use a resource policy to decide if a specific record is visible or not to a specific individual. And it's an on or off. So it's visible or it's not visible. You cannot decide to have some metadata only visible to a specific person, specific user, and other metadata public available or things like that. That is usually something that you need when you talk about entities that are different than publication. This is instead supported in DSpace Chris, also using smart logic that allow you to define rules such as this set of metadata are only visible to the principal investigator, to the investigator of this project. So you don't need to manually track, put also the investigator inside the resource policy and duplicate this information both as metadata and resource policy. But DSpace Chris have really the concept of context of an item and security related to the concept. So you have some rights over this item, and this is translated in a policy that allow you to access, to modify, and so on and so on.
Yeah, I think that we answered to the second question by Mohamed Matiza, was about the storing data sets in SPSS formats. So, for example, with a data set associated with a research paper, but not accessible to the public. It's more about the SPSS format.
Well, yeah, this is not related to entity directly, but in DSpace you can store whatever kind of digital object you like. But out of box, there is no spatial support for this file. This means that if you store, they are just binary file. And if it is 1 gigabyte of file, you have 1 gigabyte of file that you need to download. DSpace 7 have byte range support, so you can eventually download the first megabyte of 1 megabyte in any position of your gigabyte, but there is no spatial viewer dedicated to this format. As for science, we provide viewer for specific format, like audio, video, high quality images, PDF file, and so on. But right now, there is no viewer for statistics files such as SPSS and so.
And then very last questions, because I think that we missed a question that is not properly a question, but more of a statement on Raphael's side. Raphael is currently asking if currently DSpace obviously is working with a relational database, and it's okay. It will switch to another system, such as a graph database, to take advantage of all the search potential that such a system offers. I'm not sure I got a question.
Yeah, I think that I got a question, and there is no planning to community to do that right now. So not in the medium term to switch from a relational database to something else. As for science, I can say that we have an add-on that will bring this technology in DSpace and DSpace Chris. So we have a specific add-on that is named Network Lab that essentially allow you to navigate information or visualize information in DSpace using a graph DB.
Perfect. And last but not least, from Agustina, that asked, just to confirm, did you say that entities are completely independent to authority keys?
In a plain DSpace, yes. In DSpace Chris, no. They are related. But for a normal DSpace, for a basic DSpace, they are completely independent.
Perfect. And with this, we're done with all the questions. So thank you very much again for being with us this hour. We hope that this presentation was very helpful and useful. Thank you again to our Lyrasis friends for the support, and have a great rest of your day, evening, depending on the part of the world you connected with us.
Yeah, let's stay in touch with the next webinar. Okay, thank you everyone for being here.
Bye.
Bye.